Hey, Pretty Girl Club, welcome back to my Storytime series. So, I am going to be uploading a mini series, and this is going to be kind of the prologue to the other videos that I have coming out. So, you guys seem to like when I tell my personal story time. So, I'm going to talk about when I lived in the ghetto. And by the way, if you can hear my tea kettle in the background, I'm sorry. I just got done being a big back. I just had a giant cheeseburger with some onion rings. So now I need to drink some peppermint tea to kind of help me digest it. But I want to talk about when I lived in the ghetto and what it was like and why I decided to move to the ghetto, even though I didn't have to. So, number one is that I was raised in an extremely sheltered type of background. So, think of like Gossip Girl, you know, that aesthetic. I have never attended public school before. I had always gone to private schools. So, think of those schools where it's like you're in uniforms and stuff. You know, that's my childhood. I spent my childhood in uniforms. I spent my childhood around all of these extremely wealthy people. So my family, I'm not rich. My family, they're not rich, they're normal. But as far as the people we grew up around and kind of the culture that we grew up around, it was very wealthy. It was a WASP type of background. So if you're not familiar with the term WASP, it is white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. So think of that type of culture. I'm trying to think of somebody who's a good representation of this. Well, there were a few like Elon Musk personality types. There were a few Joe Rogan personality types, but for the most part, it was very much like maybe a bunch of George Bush personality types. Just think of that, okay? Think of like a bunch of Karens, I guess, that sort of culture. Think of a very sheltered type of background. So that's the kind of background that I came from. And my grandparents, none of them came from that background, okay? So basically, me and my siblings, we were seen as kind of like the pinnacle of success when it came to our family because on both sides of my family, both of them came from, I guess you could say, more of a struggle or just a different type of background. So they worked hard so that we did not have to grow up in the same type of environment that they did. Okay, sorry, I just had to get my tea out of the kettle. Um, but basically, I was very sheltered. And when it came to my parents, they were extremely protective over me. So I did not grow up with a lot of access to the Black community in particular. And I think that part of that is because a big part of Black culture is hood culture. I'm just being honest. Or at least at the time I was growing up, I feel like that was a big part of Black culture. So I wasn't allowed to listen to like Lil Wayne, and I wasn't allowed to listen to music like that. I definitely was not allowed to watch music videos. My dad did not let me watch any of those music videos, any of those movies. You know, those movies like Boys in the Hood and stuff like that. I could absolutely never watch stuff like that. Even when it came to going out when we were teenagers, first of all, I was not allowed to go anywhere. So when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to spend the night at friends' houses. But looking back, I understand why my parents did what they did. I understand why they sheltered me so much because when it came to spending the night at friends' houses, unfortunately for me, anytime I was able to spend the night at a friend's house, unfortunately, that is when I would get SA'd and stuff like that as a kid. So I totally understand why parents sometimes they don't let their children go to other people's houses because you don't know who's there. You don't know if the neighbors are coming over to their houses. So I get it. But I couldn't go anywhere. I didn't even have a cell phone. Okay, wait, I got a cell phone. I think I was maybe in junior high when I got a cell phone. I noticed that for public schools, they called it middle school. They didn't call it junior high. But anyway, with my particular school, they called it junior high and high school. And junior high starts in seventh grade. But I know for a lot of public schools, it's called middle school, and then they start you in sixth grade, I think. I think it's sixth through eighth grade. Anyway, so I couldn't have a cell phone. I absolutely could not wear makeup. So just think of a very sheltered background. My TV that we would watch, well, first of all, I couldn't have a TV in my room. Like, we weren't allowed to have a TV in our room. We had one. This is when we were super young. We had one of those small box TVs. But as we got older, we didn't always have a TV in our room. It wasn't until we were like in our mid-teens. I think I got a TV in my room when I was like 14 or something like that. And I think part of it is because my parents, they probably wanted to monitor what we were watching. I also did grow up with parental controls on the TV. So my parents had to type in a code. So, yes, I had to ask permission to watch Sister Sister, which was one of my favorite shows. With That's So Raven, I feel like the only reason I was able to watch that is because my mom didn't know really what it was, or like she didn't really know that there were guys in it and stuff. Basically, any sort of TV that had kissing in it, sex, gangsters, and like just anything that was kind of violent. My parents, they actually did a really good job of sheltering me from that sort of content. So as I got older, this is when we ended up getting a computer. So do you remember, like, was it called DSL or dial up or something? I forgot what it was called, but it's like where your computer goes like that. Yeah, so we got one of those computers, and it was in the family room area, so we couldn't have our own computers or anything like that. But I remember once I got access to a computer, that is when I started to find like forums. So I don't know if you guys remember like the long hair care forum and like all these different like black websites and stuff, or YouTube as well. This is back when YouTube. So from when I was a kid, YouTube was music videos, or at least that's what I used to watch on YouTube. I watched videos of like musicians or people singing and stuff and like doing covers. That is how I watched YouTube when I was a kid. So I ended up getting exposed to more stuff that had to do with like blackness and black culture. And I thought it was so cool. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go to the inner city. I want to be in the urban areas. Like I knew that there were certain buzzwords. Whenever the people on TV would use words like urban or inner city or ghetto or hood, I knew that they were referring to black people. So I know that that's bad, but I was a kid, so I didn't know that it was bad yet. But I remember just being so fascinated with stuff like that. And because I was in a background that was not diverse, because I was usually the only like black or black adjacent person, or like the only person of color, I really wanted to be exposed to more of the black culture, like every part of the black culture, the good part and the bad part. I just felt like it was kind of this forbidden fruit that I could not really access, or like, I don't know, maybe it was too grown for me or something. I'm not sure. But that is always how I felt when I was a kid. That's how I felt about black culture in particular. I felt like, oh, that's a very adult culture. You know, that's for like grown-ups and grown people, and they do a lot of grown people stuff when it comes to the black community. So as soon as I get out of my parents' house, I cannot wait to see what has been hidden from me. And I'm not even saying my parents hid anything from me on purpose. They really weren't trying to do that. I think they didn't want us to meet any negative stereotypes, probably. I'm assuming they just wanted us to be multicultural, you know, more multicultural, if that makes sense. So I wasn't raised in an Afrocentric home. I wasn't raised in like I don't know, like a pro-black home. I would say that my family, they were like, they loved blackness and stuff, but it wasn't like a lot of women I see on YouTube where they're like, oh, if you like anything other than blackness, then you are bad or you're anti-black. I wasn't really raised like that. I was raised very multifaceted and multicultural. So when I got older, I wanted to explore more. And one of the things that I did as I got older, I wanted to have independence. So when I was growing up, one of the first things I did to get my own sense of identity was I got a job. So I was always working a job. I had a job at the grocery store. I worked at McDonald's before. I don't remember if I've told any McDonald's stories on here. If I haven't, can you guys remind me to make my video about McDonald's and how I walked out? I don't remember if I made that video on here. But when I was a teenager, I worked at so many different places. I worked at McDonald's, Starbucks, Old Navy, just anywhere you can think of. Pretty much anywhere that has to do with like the mall or something. Oh, and one thing that I forgot to mention is the reason why I got these jobs. So I've actually been working since I was 14 years old. Is that legal? I don't know. But part of the reason why I wanted a job when I was younger is because I loved shopping. So my family wasn't rich, but the kids I was around, those kids, when I say rich, I'm talking about maybe they're wearing like a $400 sweater, but their sweater is like considered trash to them, or, you know, so I I remember always asking my parents if I could get like Juicy Couture stuff or like True Religion jeans or Betsy Johnson bags or just all the different like designer bags, like Burberry and all that. I wanted to have all of my stuff be the same as other people. Like the girls in my junior high, when they started wearing makeup, they would open their makeup bag and it would be filled with Chanel makeup. Like everything in their makeup bag would be Chanel. So I wanted to have some of those same things. And my parents, they were not able to buy those things. And so I was actually excited to get a job because I found this website. It was called chanelbags2010.com. So it was like a website where you could buy fake Chanel bags and stuff. But because I was around wealthy people, my bag, they weren't going to suspect that it was like fake or anything. They looked really good. They were like these really good knockoff bags. So I remember being so excited. And then I calculated my paychecks. I was like, okay, so if I get paid $150 every 2 weeks, that means I could buy a new Chanel bag every 2 weeks if I wanted to. So I was really excited to get a job. Those are the types of jobs I would work. So as I got into my early and mid 20s and kind of my late 20s, that is when I wanted to separate myself from my parents. So a part of me separating myself from them, it was more so based on like wanting to form my identity, because as I got older, that was when I realized that I had been kind of brainwashed. And I know that my parents weren't trying to brainwash me. I know that like it was more so just my environment, kind of my hometown, kind of the religious beliefs of some of the people in my hometown. Think of like Presbyterian churches and stuff like that, Catholicism, Christianity. Think of those types of people, those types of white people, okay? And when I was in my 20s, whenever I asked my parents for money, it was pretty rare, but if I ever did ask my parents for money, sometimes they would kind of question me, and that's valid. If somebody's asking you for money, you have every right. I totally understand why you would question them. But I wanted to have my own money. I didn't want my parents to have power over me because, they had money. So I ended up getting a job. And when I decided to move out of my hometown, at that point, I felt like I might have to live in the hood because I knew that the cities I wanted to live in were very expensive. So I'm a big city girl, okay? I like to live in expensive ass cities. So I didn't mind potentially living in the hood because I had never lived in the hood before. So I was like, it can't be that bad. A lot of people who have trauma from the hood, their trauma is actually from being in the hood for a long period of time. So even for me, after living in the hood multiple times as an adult, I don't have like super bad traumas to where it's like, oh my God, like I would never live in the hood again. I mean, if I ever had to, I would. I don't think I'll have to, but anyway, I saw that there was this apartment in my dream city and it was only $800. So I was like, oh my God, who wouldn't want to live in that city for only $800? Like, how could you pass that up? So I looked it up. It had horrible reviews. It had like 1 star. You know how they have like the 5-star reviews on different apartment buildings and stuff? So it had like 1 star. It said that the managers were bad. It basically said everything about it was just like horrible. There were people on there that were saying like, oh, I saw somebody get arrested outside or somebody got shot outside. But I was just like, you know what? This is not a big deal. So I ended up moving there. And the reason that I moved there was because I was like, okay, if it's only $800, let's say I make a few $1,000s a month. I think at that time I was probably making a couple $1,000s a month. So it's like, okay, if I'm making around $2,500 or $3,000 a month and my rent is only $800, that saves me so much extra money. And I don't have a car payment. I did not have like large credit card payments or anything. So I was like, I'm literally going to have thousands of dollars in my bank account. So that did turn out to be true, actually. I did end up saving money so that I could move to like a better part of town. But that's why I moved there, because I was like, I want to be able to save money. So I moved to this apartment in the ghetto. And the first thing that I noticed is like the people there. So my neighbors who lived downstairs, it was a black guy and a black girl. And I'm assuming they were boyfriend and girlfriend or something. I'm not sure. But I noticed that she did end up getting pregnant shortly after I moved in there. So one thing about them is that I noticed that the guy didn't have a job, because whenever I was off work, I would hear that guy downstairs rapping. He would be like rapping along to like a Drake song or something. And then sometimes he would come out on his patio and smoke weed. So like I would smell the weed smell. I would hear him coughing. I would hear him rapping. And so I was thinking to myself, oh, maybe he's a rapper. Like maybe he wants to be a rapper. But as time went on, I was like, oh, wait, no, maybe he's just like a bum or something. Like maybe he literally has no job or he's like living off of some sort of benefits or something. So another thing I noticed is that whenever I would go check the mail, sometimes him and his girlfriend, they would be sitting outside on the patio. Oh, that's another thing. People would always sit outside. So it's almost like they're people watching you or something. It's like they don't have anything to do, so then they just watch other people. I don't know. But I would always be walking outside to go get my mail and stuff, and then they would watch me. So it's almost like they knew who I was or where I lived. I'm not sure. Okay, so here's where I feel like they were mentally ill. So the apartment walls, they were super thin, so you could hear people. You could hear if somebody was yelling. If somebody's music was too loud, you could definitely hear that. But this guy, they always had super loud music. They had super loud music. They would go on the patio. Sometimes they would have another couple over there just like to hang out. They would sit outside and like be loud and ghetto and stuff. Sometimes they would even argue. And then I would see the girl walking out on the grass. So the way that the apartment was set up, there was like a little bit of grass and it was facing the street. So you don't want to be on that grass because you're about to be on the street. It wasn't like a gated apartment community. So I remember I ordered an Amazon package, and in my Amazon package, I got some slippers. They were like the stone massage sandals. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with those, but the sandals, they're a little bit heavy. It's kind of like a wooden sandal. So it does make a little bit of noise when you're walking. And they live below me, so I didn't want to make a lot of noise. Oh, and by the way, these people were making so much noise to the point where I actually bought soundproofing technology. You know the little soundproof little foam squares that you can put on your wall? I bought multiple soundproofing squares to put on my wall, to put like in the closet area next to the window. So instead of me just complaining about them or knocking on their door or like leaving them passive aggressive notes, no, I just did my part, which is to soundproof to make sure that like I don't hear as much of their music and stuff. So when I got my sandals, this is how considerate I was with my slippers. So first I bought a rug just to make sure that I don't make a lot of noise when I'm walking like above them. And then on top of that, I put blankets down on my floor because my floors were hardwood. So I put blankets down on the floor so that any area where I walked, it would make as little noise as possible. And then on top of that, whenever I was wearing my slippers, I would make sure to walk as slowly as possible and to walk as lightly as I possibly could. So I purposely was not like stomping or anything. No, it was the exact opposite. I was damn near tiptoeing on top of rugs and blankets all throughout my apartment. So I was greatly inconveniencing myself to make sure that I made as little noise as possible. So after about a week of me doing that, one time the guy below me, he got so mad that he screamed at the top of his lungs and he started banging on his ceiling. So banging on his ceiling would be my floor. So he started banging like a crazy person, like boom, 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 boom. Like, I don't know if he was trying to scare me, but I was like, no, that can't be. I was literally in denial. I was like, he can't be trying to tell me to like stop walking or to stop making noise. With the blankets that I put down and the rug that I put down and with me tiptoeing, like you would have to be sitting there like listening very intently to be able to even hear me walking. Like you'd really have to be paying attention. And I noticed that it happened for a couple days. Like whenever I would put on my little stone massage sandals. So they were kind of like slides. So think of slides. Think of how heavy slides are. They're not super heavy. And especially if you're walking on a rug, it should barely be making any noise. If anything, there might be a creaking sound, I guess, because of the hardwood floors. Maybe your ceiling has a creaking sound. But every time I would wear my slippers and try to creep around the house, this guy would literally bang on the ceiling so that I could basically hear him. And then he would be like, shut up! Just like shouting at the top of his lungs. This is a black man doing this. This is a grown-ass black man who sits outside on the patio smoking weed and rapping. And so one day I walked outside to go to work, and there was a note on my door. So this guy had written a note, and then it was like a letter, And in the letter, and it was handwritten, it wasn't typed out, of course, because he probably didn't own a computer or a printer. But he had handwritten in the letter, he was like, stop walking around and taking so many steps. I can hear you when you're walking and it's annoying. Like he kept calling me annoying in the letter. Like my steps are annoying, my shoes are annoying, my footsteps are annoying, I'm stomping. You know, he accused me of all this shit. I was definitely not stomping. Like I said, I put a rug down and I put a blanket over the entire floor just in case. And so I just ignored the letter. I didn't think anything of it. And then a couple of weeks later, I had ordered an Amazon package and I had ordered a new phone case and some nail supplies, so like nail polish and all that. And it said that on Amazon, my package was delivered, but they accidentally delivered it to the wrong address. They delivered it to to the neighbor below me. They delivered it to them. And so I went downstairs to look and see if the package was there. And of course, the package was gone and I never received it. Usually, if a neighbor gets a package and it's delivered to them on accident, a normal neighbor would like give it to you. They would knock on your door and they'd be like, oh, hey, like your package was delivered to my door. Or they would just put it in front of your door. Nope, that never happened. So they stole my package. And I remember at that time, I was like, wow, if this is going to be my life when I'm here, I don't want to live next to people like this. But as I got older, though, I do want to say that I noticed I just don't like living next to couples at all because I don't want to hear their arguing. All couples argue. And in a lot of cases, the couples are abusive. So this is true no matter what building you live in, whether it's a luxury building or just a regular place. Like I've heard married couples arguing really bad in my building. I've seen couples get evicted and stuff. So, you know, they'll argue about money. I remember one time actually, this is in my current building, which is a luxury building. And there was a black woman. She was a housewife to a black man. And he had to work some nice job because he was wearing a nice suit. They got home around like 5 p.m. because that's around the time I was on the elevator. And the guy just checked the mail. So they were looking at mail and she was asking about bills, like whether or not he paid all the bills. And this lady, she was wearing a bonnet and pajamas. Like you could tell she had been home all day and he just got home from work. So no matter where you live, if you live next to couples, they're probably going to be arguing. But in terms of why I lived in the hood though, it was because my mindset was I would rather live in the hood in my dream city than live in the best neighborhood and I'm in a place where I don't even want to be at all. So that's just something to think about. But this is kind of a prelude into my other Storytime series. I do have another story about me living in the hood. Maybe I'll tell that one when I do another Storytime. So that was in the summertime. I used to live in the hood. And this was when I was on my summer break from college. I just liked living in different cities and like not going home because I didn't want to go back to my small town. But anyway, do you live in the hood? Have you experienced being an exotical in the hood? Because it gives you a lot of attention, both positive attention and negative attention. Yeah, but what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.